All right, folks. Thursday evening. Let's get some painting done. Working, of course, on the Wallachians. Why would we be doing anything else? Well, I'm going to assume that this is rolling because the other day it looked like I wasn't and I was, so I got to have a little bit of faith. All right. Firstly, you're the first one here, Randy Collins. Welcome. Okay. Well, where we left off here is on which fellow was it? This fellow right here. We got to do some pants. We got to do wraps around the legs, and we got to do shoes and a couple of other things here. Let's yes. Studio WGS coming to you live from Malaysia. Welcome back. Or as they say in Spanish, Malasia. Yes, it's the same. Yeah, the white on the quiver wasn't very bright. We needed to fix that. Sometimes you just got to step away from what you're doing and give it a second look. Because invariably, when you're done painting in the evening, I'm pretty darn tired. It's 2-day-old coffee, so hopefully that doesn't keep me up all night. But right now, I'm really short-sighted. I'm interested in making sure I stay awake. I'm going to do, there's only a little bit of pants down here. I'm going to go ahead and do those in white. I don't think I've done a guy with white pants on. Or long johns or whatever they may be. They may actually not be pants, but who knows, right? So we're going to go ahead and do those in here. Let me just switch screens just out of curiosity and see if my other YouTube screen, it looks like the video is going, because I don't think it is. Yeah, it doesn't look like it's going, but apparently it is. So maybe I need to refresh that. All right, I'm going to leave it alone. Obviously, people are responding to it, so it's working on your end. One of the mysteries, I had to switch from OBS to the Streamlabs one. The OBS one's given me all kinds of problems, so this one seems to be a little bit more secure. Anyways, for the time being. But these programs are way too powerful. I mean, you could do all kinds of like dancing things and stuff like that. You can do, you can do stuff like, let's see. Where is it? Oh, like when somebody subscribes to my page, I'm supposed to have that little icon over there. But I don't get that many subscribers. I mean, I do. I get maybe on average, maybe 20 a month. So the likeliness that one of them will subscribe while I'm doing a live feed is pretty unlikely. So what's the paint schedule like? Well, I try to paint Saturday mornings and Sunday mornings. And in the past, I have been very unsuccessful trying to paint Monday through Friday. But any chance I'm going to get, I'm going to try to do that. So I've just gotten to the point where I don't want to paint unless I'm filming. I just get bored, and any tiny little bit of interaction like you're doing right now, even though it might be very small, very insignificant, the interaction keeps me involved and keeps me on task. So I don't really want to paint without being having some interaction with other folks that are interested in painting, however small and insignificant it might seem. You know, I mean, it is just kind of a one-way situation. So, you know, when people post things, I try to, you know, read out their comment, and you know, as long as it's not some kind of a spam thing, which, you know, 99% of the people on here aren't really interested in that. And you know, at least we can have some kind of a, you guys can decide maybe a little bit how the conversation can go. But I'm not really interested in just painting and watching either something on my phone, or it'd be relatively easy to watch something on my phone because I've got my little, you can see here in the thing, this is the stand here for the phone. I can get it pretty close to my face since I'm basically blind right now. But I need to be blind to be able to paint. But because I'm nearsighted. But you know, I would much rather do this. I'd much rather do this. It's going to keep me, hopefully I'll at least be able to paint for an hour. Once this guy's done, I need to paint 5 more guys, and all these skirmishers are done for this army, and we can go about basing them. And that's, of course, the fun part, because you can start seeing maybe some of the project coming together. Because that'll be 6 stands of Saloy plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That'll be 11 stands for the army, which sounds like I'm almost done, but I think I did a count. I have to do like 16 or something like that to do all the modifications, but be a good chunk, you know. Missed all your sessions December and January. That's okay, you know. You got real life stuff to do. I got one of the channels that I watch. One of my favorite channels to watch is this guy that does, and I've talked about it before, that does the diecast racing. And I'm like 2 months behind. I need to just sit down one day and like watch all of his stuff. But you can't have it in the background. That stuff it's pretty intense. It's, and by intense, I mean it's pretty exciting to watch that stuff. So I've honestly just forgotten. So, you know, you're not alone. We all, new stuff comes along and constantly distracted. I don't have much time really to watch television or anything other than like during my lunch hour. And honestly, I forget. I'll remember as soon as I get done with lunch, I'm like, damn it, I meant to check out something or another, you know, and I got to wait till the next day or in the evening. Generally the evenings, I'm not painting because I'm trying to go to the gym with the family. It's good for all of us. We all need to do that. And, you know, you just cut into, there's not a whole lot of time left before you got to go to bed. And, but on the chance that we don't go, like the girls had an event that they needed to go to this evening. So I stayed here and threw some laundry in, and I got done switching it, and now we can do some painting. So even if it's just for an hour, you know, we're going to kind of plug away at this. Want to get these done because there's other stuff to paint right behind them, you know. It's not that I don't want to paint these guys. It's just that, you know, we need to finish these folks up so we can do more things. I can buy no lead and still can probably do about 30 armies. So pre-feudal Scots and Byzantines of a couple different denominations, and I got Armenians to do, you know, like the Crusade period Armenians. I've got pre-feudal Scots. I've got my Ptolemaics to bring up to 3.0 standard. I got my Japanese to bring up to 3.0 standard. What else do I got? I got feudal English. I got all kinds of stuff to do. And I'm looking forward to doing all of them. I've got Grenadine, you know, Emirate of Granada to do. You know, this army actually, This army actually is an army that I got in a horse trade. A gentleman contacted me, let's say about a year ago, and he found out that I had some Lydian figures. And I did. I actually had like 2 DBA armies worth of Lydians. And one of them by Chariot and the other one by Falcon. And, being a book one army and not being excited about book one, at that point I hadn't even worked on my book one army. He was like, hey, if you're not doing anything with them, you want to do a horse trade? I'm like, well, what'd you have in mind? And at the time, I had just gotten done with the Hungarians, or I was just working on them or something like that. So I was over there in Eastern Europe, and the guy offered to give me Wallachians and later Poles for the Lydians, and it probably was the right move because I wouldn't have painted the Lydians by now. And I'm already plugging away at these guys. Because to be honest with you, it's more exciting to paint these crappier armies. These armies that are a little lighter on their feet and they can't stand, they gotta play, in an elusive fashion. They can't just stand on the battlefield and go toe to toe everything. They have a lot of light troops, and honestly, I enjoy those battles the most. And I like the idea of being able to build an army that is good for an open, and it's good for Wimp Wars, and it's good for Saloy Silliness, and it's good for, As a matter of fact, this army here could have gone and done the Good Night, Sweet Prince that we did on Monday, because they can get up to 4 knights because they have Polish allies. So Polish allies can actually have 3 knights, and you could substitute 3 of the Saloy in this army, and use the Moldavian general, which is a knight. So you would have the knight general and the rest of the army, and then an ally of 3 knights. So they could have actually played in that event. They could have played. They can play in Wimp Wars. They can play in Saloy Silliness. And I guess you could bulk them up to use them in an open if you really wanted to, Lots of different ways of playing it. So, that's what I'm looking forward to. I like getting those armies that can do all kinds of different stuff and play them all kinds of different ways. And it's interesting that the other screen doesn't show that I'm online yet. Okay. Well, let me do one. Let me put my life at ease here. Let me go videos, and let me go. It says I'm live, so I'm just gonna take. I'm going to take my word for it that that's what's going on. Oh, okay, here it is. Here's the screen where it shows everybody. Rhett Scott, welcome. Another Floridian. Knight armies are not so easy to play. I don't like them. I like to paint them, but they misbehave like nobody's business. They misbehave like nobody's business. I like things that are orderly. But with that said, I don't like warband. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to build warband armies. I'm just not going to take a warband army to an open, But I like playing, just because I don't like a troop type doesn't mean, we're not going to do those events. It's actually the opposite, If you don't like something, there's your opportunity to come around. And this guy is complete. This guy's complete. So, bam, he's, right? Yeah, his hair's done. All right, so, and I believe these are all the same. No, that's incorrect. This guy has a fur jacket and a helmet, 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 and helmet, but no fur jacket. Okay, so we'll put that guy off by himself, and let's touch these guys up with black and make sure we didn't lose any spots here. Let's make sure we didn't lose any spots here. We don't want to go back and have some metal thing glaring at you. And it's a heck of a lot better with this Vallejo surface primer than it is with whatever I was using before for painting, because the surface primer is self-leveling and you can lay it on thick and it doesn't cover up the detail because it's self-leveling. It'll move on to somewhere else on the figure. And it's really an interesting consistency. It's supposedly some form of polyurethane, and it really does behave differently than it almost behaves like watered down, like thinned down enamel paint. It goes on really, really nicely. And we're going to put some more black out here because it looks like we're consuming this. Before the wet palette, I had switched my black and my white to using craft paint for it because I was going through so much of it in my painting style. And it was drying out on me because I wasn't using a wet palette. And as soon as I started using a wet palette, I went back to using the Vallejo black and the Vallejo white because, you know, all of a sudden I wasn't going through it so much. But I've been using a wet palette, I don't know, 6, 7 years maybe. But this particular one that I bought, about 3. Maybe not even 7 years. But I'd rather do the pre-bought one because I like the paper that fits on here. And I was using an old circa 1964 sandwich Tupperware thing that was just kind of a flat, you know, little container you could put, you know, just a simple sandwich, you know, like a simple bologna sandwich or whatever, you know. And it's just a Tupperware thing. And I just, I put a sponge down there and I put a piece of parchment paper and that worked. It wasn't as orderly as this because it, you know, would curl up a lot easier. But, you know, once they had this at one of the shows, I'm like, okay, I'll pick this up, and there's no looking back. But I don't know that I'm saving that much paint. It's more like it just keeps me from having to stop what I'm doing and putting more paint down most of the time because it'll stay alive here for a while. All right. And oh, I think the visitors appeared finally. They've been gone for a couple hours, and I just now started painting. Yeah, those square Tupperwares. I've got an Army Painter one now. I got mine before the Army Painter one came out, so the Army Painter stuff seems to be pretty readily available everywhere. You know, stores that would normally carry Warhammer stuff, which is the most common. You know, hobby stores here in the States are kind of they've kind of gone away. So the closest thing you got is these game shops that almost always have nothing historical, but they do have paints, and you know, the Games Workshop type stores, they'll have Army Painter stuff. So you don't wet palette when you paint 15mm armies. Okay. Let me take a little break here. I mean, not a little break. Let me make sure the girls don't need anything, and I'm going to come right back. And that's what this says right here. Be right back, folks. In about 3 minutes or so. Okay, we're back. Told you it wasn't going to be long. So yeah, my painting schedule is, assuming we're not going out of town, is Saturday morning, Sunday morning, and any other time I get a chance. Because this just takes time. You know, the only way I can get quicker is just paint more often. I'm not willing to cut corners. Now, I did have a thought. I'm going to make one of these guys with a really dark fur jacket, and let's make it this guy. And you know, because this could be a bear or a pig or something like that, something that has a black coat. So this is the guy who's going to have the black coat. And one of my favorite things to do is, after all these guys are painted, I'll seal them up, and then I get to decide who's on what stand. And I love doing that because it's almost kind of like it's a proof theorem. Like, okay, this guy's over here with the blonde hair, so we don't want another guy with the blonde hair, so it can't be that. And I used to, on my first couple armies, try to pre-designate who everybody was. Like, there's going to be two guys on here, one's going to be red, one's going to be blue, and you know, like decide what they were going to look like, and then paint them accordingly. And that's just creating more, I don't know, time overhead, more things that aren't moving the production line forward. You know, analysis paralysis kind of stuff. Just start painting, and it'll all sort itself out. You know, and I try, if I'm going to paint a bunch of folks that are an army that is irregular, as this one is, as many are, I'm going to try to paint all the poses that are the same in sequence. So that way I am making a conscious effort to not make, you know, all these guys have, for instance, the same or a similar color jacket. You know, because otherwise it's going to be pretty obvious. Oh, well, every time you painted one of these figures, they have a brown jacket or whatever. So in order to avoid having that problem down the road, and I haven't had that problem, but I could see where that was heading if I didn't keep myself on a short leash, is just go ahead and do those similar figures first, so that way I'm making a conscious effort to not make the similar figures all look the same. And so far it's worked. So far it's worked. Now this guy that has this dark jacket, he's going to have lighter colored hair, and that's just from a contrast standpoint. It's going to look better than if you just give this guy black hair and beard like a lot of people have. So he's got an undershirt. And did we do a bluish green? Well, we did a bluish green one. Did we do a green? But not super bright. I need to grab a green. Let's see what we got. Oh, no, that's a beautiful color, but that's expensive. Here we are down here. I think this is the one that I wanted to use. Golden olive. And this is one of these greens that just doesn't mix well no matter what. It's got one of those beads in there, but still it's difficult. Oh, you know what? Let's go old school. That color is almost the same as a color that I have that's almost 40 years old. 30 years old. Goblin green. I probably bought this in 1989 or 88 or something like that. These containers are so good, this paint doesn't go bad. That's why they discontinued them. All right, let's see what we got here. Look at that. It has almost a pleasant smell. Not that I go around smelling paints, but I did go by and start working on some models that I've had for like 20 or 30 years, that I'm going to use for wargaming. And And the first thing I noticed is the model glue has a smell. And, you know, you're working on this stuff with acrylics. Nothing ever smells. You know, nothing has a discernible smell. And yeah, you grab something like that and all of a sudden it's like, wow, what's this strong smell this thing have? You know, nothing to get you high or anything, but just kind of, you know, you're not used to doing that. Not used to smelling that stuff. The smelliest thing I use on a regular basis is epoxy. And it's not very odorous. But this paint doesn't smell at all. Malodorous. All right, let's add a little bit more of this core color, as I like to call it. And I'm not going to go all the way. I'm not going to go all the way into the green. We're going to start lightening it up before we get to the top, because we don't want the colors of these figures to be too intense. A couple of them have like a bright shirt, but that's it. I mean, it's just a handful of folks. Color intense linens and cloths cost a lot of money, and these guys are just run-in-the-mill peasants. And, you know, in my opinion, the way I'm kind of designing these guys is they really don't have the extra cash to be all Gucci'd up, you know? So that's one of my favorite things about painting is picking the palette that I'm going to use. In other words, kind of the theme of the army or how intense or subtle the colors are going to be. And that's just my own personal opinion, what I've read and what I think looks okay. You know, I've seen many people paint really well, but I just didn't like the palette that they chose. And that's fine. It doesn't really matter. As long as they like it, they're the ones that are important. But it's one of the most fun things, I think, to do. So I wouldn't want somebody else painting figures for me because I want to pick those things. Among other reasons, but I wouldn't want somebody else to paint figures for me. So I enjoy doing this. It just takes a long time, but I enjoy doing this. I'm looking for somebody to go to work for me. Any takers on that? So I can sit here all day and make videos and talk bullshit. No? Okay. I didn't think so. Yeah, see, I'd do this for free. I'm not doing what I do for a living for free. That'd be silly. That would be silly. I wonder if you took a poll and it was accurate. I mean, that's probably asking too much. If you took a poll that was accurate, what percentage of people are defined by what they do for a living? I wonder what it is. I'd say it's at least half. And there's a good percentage of folks that I think are just killing themselves. No, I'm not a latest generation person. I mean, I understand you got to go to work, and I want to do a good job while I'm there, but I disconnect from that when I'm here. Thank goodness. But I'm not defined by what I do for a living. People that are doctors and all they do is doctor talk all the time. Like, nah. Okay, I think, yeah, let's lighten this up a tiny little bit more. I think we're about done with it. Oh, the white one died. It's, I probably put it out a couple days, probably on Saturday. So, kind of expect that to happen. Now, unlike the light horse in this army, which I think took forever to paint, they had a lot of stuff on them. They had like a shield plus a horse, and all kinds of different things on the figure. They had a saddle cloth and another saddle cloth peeking from underneath, and a sword and a bow case, and there was a lot to them. These figures are a lot simpler. These actually don't even have, they don't have the sword on the back. He just has kind of like a large dagger on the front. So these figures paint a lot quicker. I timed myself the other day, and it seems, I always say that it takes me about 4 hours a figure, but these guys did not take 4 hours a figure. These guys took maybe 2, maybe even an hour and a half if I was really, kind of rushing, which I haven't been. I'm not in that big of a hurry to get these guys done. Not that I'm putzing around, but I don't really have a deadline. They're going to get done when they get done. The day of deadline stuff is over. Deadlines just create stress, and I'm not going to work on another army until this one's complete. So the only thing pushing me is like, man, I want to look at some other figures. I always love looking through my big pile of lead and seeing what I could make out of what I have. Other people hate that. I know a guy I used to paint with, as I like to call him, the original Mitch. Him and I painted together, and so I got used to painting being a social thing, social to paint. But he got into DBA, and he did not want any extra figures, almost like it was bad juju. If you have extra figures laying around, they're going to get upset and come after you in the middle of the night, So he was always army pack. And I just detest army packs because I've had 2 bad experiences before I even started playing DBA with the army packs of just getting the wrong figures, and that's taken one of the fun things out of it, I think, is going through and figuring out what troops, what figures, what manufacturers or poses to use for different troop types in your army. I mean, that's a big appeal to me. Other people don't like it. It's an opportunity to learn about the troops and the troop compositions and the miniature manufacturers, and it's one of the things I enjoy the most. I've even been known to put armies together and then just, okay, well, that was fun, and then go back to painting a different one. As I've got 6 or 7 armies that I've already picked the specific figures for. They're just kind of waiting in the wings to their turn to get painted. So, yep, you take your times with figures now. Good. I'm glad you're on, because I got a question specifically for you. Because I know you either work at a hobby store. I did a long time ago. It was my first part-time job in the circa 1990. But you either work at a hobby store or own one. So I just want to ask you, since the pandemic, Has your business improved? Have you gotten more business by people that are doing hobbies coming in? Hopefully it has. I would like to see if there was an accurate report that would be able to say that, the pandemic sucked for a lot of people, but the hobby industry or the miniatures industry actually did better than years past. So I'm curious if, you don't have to be the owner of the store to know that. I knew what was going on even when I wasn't the owner of the store. Has it improved since the pandemic? I'd like to think that everybody's has, and hopefully that's something good that came out of it. Not that we need to have another shutdown of everything for your businesses to take off, but be interesting to see if that was something that actually improved. You own a hobby store, okay? Essex Army packs make it easier for new gamers to get in. Absolutely, for new gamers. Absolutely. If I'm going to take this long doing a figure, I want to pick exactly who it is. And I don't mind having extra figures. Like when I order individual packs to make up something, I always make sure there's a couple extras because I don't want to get something in the mail and then find out one of the spears is missing or bent or half broken. And now I had exactly the amount of figures that I needed. Now I got to order another pack. Or send away for a replacement or, nobody benefits from that. I don't mind having extra figures. I find a use for them, No, it hasn't improved business. In fact, folks were held right to their wallets. It only got better after. Interesting. Interesting. It seems like here in the States, well, you only know what you experience, but anything that I experienced here in the States, it seemed like all you heard about is how nobody wanted to go to work, but yet everybody was spending money hand over fist. So it's like, the piper's you're gonna have to pay the piper, I'd love to not go to work either, but I didn't miss a single day, just chugging along every day, I don't get to stay home. I'd love to work home. Love to work from home just one day in my entire life ever. Nope, ain't gonna happen. Not in my line of work. So, but I've just been chugging along like it's. Like the pandemic never happened. At work, anyways. So, well, hopefully things continue to get improved because I think the miniatures hobby can always anything that improves their livelihood's always good. Because I think just the nature of it, there's some people that just they don't have the patience that they used to. If you wanted to play something historical, when I was a kid, you had to do this, or watch a historical program or read a book. You couldn't play a video game because, yes, there were video games, but they didn't look great or anything like that. It didn't replace it. So, and some people, if they have a historical inclination or even a fantasy inclination, there's other things they can do that don't involve painstakingly painting all these figures to get their jollies out of of a miniatures type game. Like that Field of Glory computer game. I'm sure there's some people that the Field of Glory computer game kept them from ever getting into miniatures because that gave them their fix. Now, I've played it a fair amount, and it's apples and oranges for me. You still get some of the historical fun, but it doesn't replace painting your own figures. It doesn't replace collecting your own figures and surfing and seeing who makes what and all the other side fun things that I enjoy in the hobby that may not be apparent to many people. If it wasn't for a good-hearted landlord, I would have gone out of business. That's good. That's good it worked out. She lucky that I currently can work from home. Oh, that's good. It saves fuel, man. I mean, why spend so much? I mean, you live in a place where it has a significant amount of traffic. You could spend easily an hour each day. That's not unreasonable. An hour, half an hour to, half an hour back, plus stress, plus all the fuel, plus inconvenience. You know, work from home if you can, you know, if you're able to. I'm just not able to with what I do. I'd love to, but you asked around, and because of the general mood here, not many gamers were painting. Everyone just got in TikTok. Well, you won't see TikTok on my phone. That's well, first of all, it's a waste of time, and once I found out who owns TikTok, I'm not interested in giving them any of my attention, much less money. TikTokers, I like to call it attention whores. Yeah, it's cool if you like to do that, but that's not what I'm here for. I mean, I'm fine getting attention what I do here, you know, but I know a little bit about this. So I figured, well, why should I die with this information in my freaking skull? You know, the people that I game with, I've got a good group of gamers, but none of them paint. Oh, that's not true. Joe paints. But Joe, you know, Joe doesn't live in town, you know, so, but pretty much nobody else paints. So I can't talk about painting stuff with Mitch because, you know, it'd be like speaking another language to him. He doesn't get it. He doesn't get it. He never painted. And well, now he's too old to start, so. Too old there. And he doesn't have an interest in it. And I wouldn't do this if this wasn't relaxing. I mean, this is, you know, this is therapy. As far as I'm concerned. I think this guy, is it a shirt that I can see a little bit underneath it, or his neck? I think it's a shirt. Do we still have this green alive? We don't. We don't. Okay, well, we can remix it. We need only a tiny little bit. So let's put the first color there. And then let's add a little bit more of the and a little bit of white. Okay, we said we were going to give this guy a lighter color beard, so let's shoot for making this guy a blonde. All right, so we're going to need Mr. Yellow here because I like adding a little bit of those highlights, and I got to use this yellow paint somehow. TikTok best source of info is in Russia-Ukraine troop movements. I know. I wake up in the morning. I am so not informed with the news. I'm just not falling for the trap of them telling me what I'm supposed to be scared about. So I do occasionally go, I haven't checked the news in like 4 days. So I'll go on YouTube. I'll go on Google, the front Google page, and put Ukraine and see what I come up with. It's like, nope, no invasion yet. Or I'll do, Biden to see what that guy's up to. And then I'm like, oh, okay, nothing new, same nonsense as always. And then I just go back, 4 or 5 days and not worry about the outside world. But their magic tricks of making me worry about what they, wanting to make you crawl under your bed doesn't work on me. It hasn't worked on me in years. That's just bad juju waiting to happen. Mr. Skylab. Utah Wargamers. For me, painting and gaming with minis fulfills the fascination I have with miniatures-related hobbies, whether trains, models, or games. Yeah, my dad was really into trains. I just didn't have time to do both. I mean, we have limited amount of time. So you kind of have to pick what you could spend your time doing. I'm going to be lazy, and there's already a brown there. So that's what we're going to use as the base color for that. We're going to darken this up a tiny little bit. Oh. And then we're going to paint his whole beard and hair in this medium dark brown type color. That's what we're going to use as the bottom layer of him. We'll see how blonde he ends up getting. It's good to not have a definitive plan how things need to turn out so that you can be flexible and be happy with the results. You know, there's some things that I am very particular how it needs to turn out. Like, okay, this guy, I want an emblem of a lion on his shield or whatever. So you know, kind of needs to look like a lion. But as far as, you know, exactly what color, you know, the hair this guy needs to have, that's not really that important. You know, it's not like I'm painting a certain person and he was known to look a certain way. Okay. Now we're going to add more of this core color here to it. And let's highlight from there. And then we're going to add a little bit of that yellow for the blonde. You know, and these are Essex figures. And, you know, the thing about Essex figures is they've been around for a long time. They make a ton of different armies. But the figures all kind of look similar. So they're not really... It's kind of hard to get excited about another Essex army. Like if you painted an Essex army, it's difficult to like go, all right, I can't wait to paint another one. Because they're kind of the same poses, the same kind of thing. Now, with that said, they have above average faces. They have faces that have features on them that actually paint up really nicely, which is a problem that a lot of manufacturers, I think, actually have. They have faces that are just kind of, you know. So I'm not knocking Essex. It's just that they are all, and sometimes they have a few awkward poses. None of these are an example of that, but there are some awkward poses. But I like to mix everybody in here. We add a little bit more yellow to that. There we go. And then we're going to add a little bit of white to that color. And let's see what we get. All right. And where's the white? Right here. White is super powerful. You add too much and you've gone too far. All right, now we can move on to doing his helmet. All right, let's do the bow. The bow's pretty significant, and it's right there, front and center of everything that we're doing. This guy looks kind of like a Viking, but you know, Slav, Viking. They're all cousins of one degree or another. Check out the CIT Twitter page. Oh, I don't Twitter. Yo, catching the last few minutes of every U.S. war game streamer. There's that many of us on here? Group of Russian and Ukrainian civilians doing independent research, all verified. That's me, but happy because some Osprey book, The Landsknecht's War of the Roman Empire, came in. Oh, yeah. That Landsknecht book's pretty cool. Essex, pretty okay value. I do like buying a bunch of sample packs and seeing what turns up. Somebody told me the other day, and I forget who it was, they said that they thought Essex was really expensive. And I'm like, no, they're not. And they had a price hike. You know what's expensive? Figures that you buy and you don't do anything with. That's really expensive. But if you're going to paint them, it's okay. It's a cheap hobby if you have, if you don't buy every single thing you feel like doing. You know, if you just paint, if you just buy and then paint what you buy, you know, it's really cheap, I think, you know. My lead pile is a bit embarrassing, but I definitely have a few Essex and alternative armies orders in me. A regular too, just ordered some Normans, Byzantines, Lombards, Arabs. There's a lot of people that make some really interesting Arab figures that you can mix and match with each other and have a really interesting troop composition. I really enjoyed making up my Turks. I know the Turks aren't Arabs. but you know, they're a Middle Eastern army, and they it was a lot of fun giving them a lot of character. That and my Courage troops too. You know, both of those armies I do really poorly with. I don't care. I enjoy playing them, and they look good. So you know, that's the important thing. Make sure they look good when they're getting crucified, because you never know what that dice is going to do. Yeah, you never know what that dice is going to do. But speaking of modern combat, I actually had a modern Japanese navy, or not the whole navy, but a half dozen ships, 8 ships for the Japanese and for the Chinese. Because 3 or 4 years ago, I'm like, I might be interested to do some modern naval combat with those, you know, those islands that they were building. Remember they were hauling all that sand out there and building those fake islands and putting runways on them and stuff like that. I said that might be kind of cool. So I got Japanese, I got Chinese, I've got Taiwan as well. I just haven't painted those. The Taiwanese ships are just ex-US ships. They have a lot of ex-US stuff. So they were just US ships that are out of that. But they're all 1/6000 scale, which they're really cute. They're from Shapeways, and they paint up pretty quick, and they look really good, I think. And they're more in scale with the game. But I've got those modern set of rules, Shipwreck, and I just don't have it in me to learn new rules on my own. Like, I don't mind playing new games. I just don't want to be the point guy and figure it all out. I kind of burned out on that. Kind of burned out on having to find all the answers with wargaming. That's why I enjoy playing DBA so much. Is you would just sit down and start playing. You know, we don't argue over rules. We just start playing. Could the game be better? Absolutely. But, you know, I don't know if the gameplay could be... Well, the gameplay could be. But, you know, the advantage is that, you know, you could just sit down and start rolling dice, which is ultimately what I want to do, you know, and then get excited about building the next army. But you just can't beat being able to throw down 4 games, not be rushed, like Mitch and I did the other day. We threw down 4 games in 2 hours. 2 hours, 4 minutes, something like that. You just can't beat that, you know? You know, could the rules have a lot more detail? Absolutely. They could even take a little bit longer, but the nice thing is that you have 4 different experiences that you had in one evening, you know, and the battles were done to a completion. It's not like, well, you know, if we could have gone another turn, I would have had you, you know. Yeah, it's not one of those things, so I'll take the positives out of it, you know. I've played other games that have lots of negatives and make me not want to play the game again. So, hooray for Shipwreck, my go-to rules for modern 1/6000 naval. Yeah, you need to come to Florida and teach me how to play the game. Should do some DBA vids. I've been so knee-deep in naps. Yeah. Have you seen my modern ships? Let me go find them. I think I know exactly where they're at, and they're really, really cute. Well, they're in a very particular container that nothing else is like that. And it's just a matter of where that container is. And it's not where it was last time, which is strange because it's not something I touch very often. Damn it, man. I don't know where they are. Maybe on this side. In here? No. Well, we'll have to leave that for another evening. I don't know where they're at. don't take up a whole lot of space. They definitely don't take up a lot of space. All right, one more shot. If you give up, you don't find stuff. Here we are. See? If you give up, you're not going to find stuff. Yep, that's done. All right. So this is something, I painted these guys like 3 years ago, and I feel like I used all my experience of wargaming getting into these, and I started off the right way. So I just put them in a Swiss Army box that I had from my thing, and it's, so of course this is metal, which means it's magnetized, and they're all in here. And they're all 1/6000 scale. They're on popsicle sticks, and on the popsicle sticks there is a little magnet, which is part of my Lidco magnets just cut up. That's why I'm short a couple of size stands, a couple of size magnets. But we got what? We got a couple of frigates for the Chinese and like 4 destroyers. And the Japanese have a couple of destroyers, 1, 2, 3 destroyers, 3 frigates, and the helicopter carrier. I don't know how clear that comes out, but. And then I just printed the name and printed that out. Let's see if we can. That's probably as clear as I'm going to get it. So, anyways, this is about as close as they're going to be able to get to the scale of the game. I've got the rules, I just haven't played them yet. And you see the Chinese are a little lighter color, because the Chinese Navy's pretty light colored on their ships. So, and the Japanese, and I think I've got some French ship as well. So that's what I was going to do. I didn't want to do the U.S. Russian stuff. I want to do something a little bit different. So, anywho, maybe I'll have to get some Russian ships so they can combine with the Japanese, with the Chinese to screw us. Oh, I'm sorry. No, I wanted to do this stuff in the Pacific. Like, I'm not interested in doing the Pacific in World War II at all. But, you know, the modern stuff, at least it's something different, you know. Yeah, I think they look good, but they've never been played with, you know. Oh, well. I found a scenario on the shipwreck. There's a scenario on the shipwreck, the Yahoo group for shipwreck, and I downloaded it, and it's a 3-way battle between the Japanese, the Taiwan, and the Chinese. And I figured that looks interesting, and they gave me some ships, so I ordered those ships from that scenario, and figure if I ever do it, then at least there's some information on there. Now, why do I have all these alerts, and what the heck does it say? Oh, skipped frames. Okay, well, I'm not worried about skipped frames. But yeah, I've just never played the. I've never played the game. I have them. I've just kind of like analysis paralysis, worried about starting. You know, probably what I need to do is to get me off my ass next time that the girls are out of town or something like that. I'll just film myself trying to learn the rules. I know that stinks, but that forces me to kind of learn as I go. But I don't know. I'm reading some of them, and it looks like the game might not be much fun. I think that one of the things that makes DBA very strong is you as the player can see everything that's going on, but your guys don't listen to you. And I think that you may actually have too much power. I could be wrong, but just from reading them, it seems like you may have too much knowledge as a player about what's going on that you can react to when you shouldn't be able to. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I shouldn't jump to conclusions. Regardless, they were a lot of fun to paint. And the nice thing about being modern ships is there's pictures of them in color. So I went in and did a picture of it, and like, okay, this has little stripes for the helicopter to land in this way, and this one has the stripes for the helicopter to land this way. It's very minuscule, but it also, you paint it very quick. It's not like, you know, you got to spend 3 hours painting the deck stripes on the stuff. They've got like the little, this one has like yellow markings there, and the other one has red, and the other one has white. I didn't just invent it. It was, based on what it supposedly looks like. So I like the little oddball navies. I was tempted to getting the Indian Navy, because the Indian Navy has some unique ships, and I think their decks are like green or something like that, something really colorful. So that might be fun. But I don't think I'll be buying any more until I do something with these oil rigs. There's people that print out like oil rigs, so you can do a battle over an oil rig or something like that. There's all kinds of what if type stuff you could do that's that's reasonably could happen. So that's why I got them, is to do that kind of stuff more than I wasn't really interested in doing a US. I really didn't want anything to do with the US because I shy away from things that are really one-sided. So unless you've got a US ship that's way far away where it shouldn't be, all by its lonesome, I'm not planning on getting any US ships. So should have come sooner. You missed the painting session. No, you didn't. To be honest, a part of me is very happy to have painted figures that haven't been played with. Huh. Ship talk, eh? I've been on the bridge in the New Jersey, which is an Iowa-class battleship. You really feel insignificant when you look out at the main guns. That's all we used to do. In the early 90s, we first started playing Sea Creek 4. That's all we used to do. Well, that's 90% of the game that we used to do. And we probably played 150 games of Sea Creek 4. But I haven't played Sea Creek since the mid 90s. I played a game here and there. Joe that plays DBA with us, he's big on that. We just haven't gotten around to doing that stuff. But that was one of my first loves. If you go and look on my feeds on a playlist, I have a playlist for book reviews, and I did a book review that. Book that I grew up with. A book that I grew up with. It was a coffee table book. We always had it around, and that you'll see if you look through there. What we got that probably around 1982 or 1983, and my dad was always into battleships and stuff like that. Wasn't into wargaming, but he was into that kind of stuff, and that's kind of the first thing I started gaming is, that kind of stuff. I was big into the Atlantic stuff, and the Nazi ships trying to break out and the British trying to stop them. But my favorite theater ended up being the Mediterranean. I really like the Mediterranean because, both sides had convoys. Both sides had potential air support. Both sides had significant fleet units that could get into combat. You could have battleships versus battleships and that kind of stuff. So I really like the Mediterranean. And we played a lot of it. We played a lot of it, and and the opposite of DBA. We played one game of this is about 1985, 1996, something like that. Maybe it was 94. I went over to a friend's house and we had an all-nighter. I mean, literally an all-nighter. We started playing like at 10 o'clock in the morning, 9 or 10 in the morning on a Saturday. We played till 9 or 10 in the morning on Sunday. We didn't sleep. Went all the way through. We went through, I don't know how many cases of Pepsi or whatever. It was like a 26-hour long game, and we still hadn't committed all our forces. And it wasn't like nothing was happening. There was just that big of a thing going on. We're guesstimating ranges, and yeah, our brains were freaking fried after that. I would never play a game now that you had to guesstimate ranges. I'm just not going to do that. It's just not worth it. In the future, I'm going to start getting the World War II Navy using GHQ ships. I'm done with that. I had about, I sold all mine. I had about 500 of them. No, they weren't all painted, but probably 250 to 300 of them were. They weren't painted to this level. I've kept a few that actually looked okay because when I started painting better to this level, I got out of the ships. Everybody that played that just kind of moved out of town. I live in a very transient college town, so people don't stay here long. I'm the exception, but I sold them all. I wasn't happy with how I looked and on how they looked, and I wasn't using them, And the neat thing is the GHQ models had gone up in price so much, I actually made money on them. I mean, I had to paint them, and people bought them painted, and that was a pain in the butt to list all that stuff on eBay, but I sold those out probably around 12 years ago, something like that. And I had a mishmash of manufacturers. I had CNC, and GHQ, because when I started, GHQ didn't make that much stuff. As a matter of fact, when I started Naval Wargaming in 1/2400 scale, GHQ only made, they had just started coming out with stuff, and they only made stuff for like Pacific and the Americans and the Japanese in the Pacific in World War II. That's all they made. And I just was never a theater that was very interesting to me. So yeah, I had a few because one of the people that liked to play, he was big into that period. So, you can't always do Atlantic stuff, because they won't have anything to use. But everybody wants to use the ships that they have, and in a scenario type thing. So I had a few Japanese and a few American ships here and there. And mainly the early 42 stuff. After Guadalcanal, pretty much not worth doing anything. But we did quite a few games with the ABDA stuff, and ran a little mini campaign with the ABDA. That was pretty cool. But I had CNC, I had some Superior, some Viking Forge stuff, a few of those plastic Panzer ships, for ships that nobody made. That kind of stuff. Running supply runs to Malta, being assailed by a Luftwaffe and Kriegsmarine, does have the making of a great war game campaign. It does. It does. It's pretty interesting. It's pretty interesting. And the British, I love playing the British because the British have just a hodgepodge of different things. It wasn't like, the Americans would just go build some destroyer class and they have 24 of the same damn things. The British ones were different, and they had cool names and interesting camouflage patterns, and they were everywhere, and and they were involved in the Atlantic stuff and the Mediterranean, my two favorite theaters. So, I had a lot of Brits. The old Rodney, I loved playing old Rodney. But, that's all we did for many, many years. So if I never do it again, I'm okay, I'm not going to start over again. What, battleships are almost $20 now? I remember when they were $5.50, So, okay, this guy needs some kind of hose or leggings or something like that. So let's see if this light gray is still alive. And it is. It is. All right, we're going to add let's add a touch of brown. Let's add a touch of brown to it. Maybe a little bit more. And then add a little black, because this is going to be our bottom shade. Let's paint the whole legging thing in that color. And then we'll come in and lighten up with the other one. That's all we used to do. I remember that we used to do, one of my favorite battles to do is what we would call as the New Year's Eve battle, which I think it's commonly referred to as the Battle of the Barents Sea. And that's December 31st, 1942. The convoy intercept of a Murmansk convoy by Hitler, Lutzow, and 6 destroyers, where they split 2 different ways, and the convoy is escorted by Sheffield, Jamaica, and just a litany of different small craft. And it's at night, and it's cold, and it's bad visibility, and it was always one of my favorite ones to game, and we actually gamed it on the 50th anniversary. So what would that have been? That would have been New Year's Eve of 1992. So, yeah, that was always a nail biter. You never know which way it was going to go. You really like ironclads and pre-dreadnoughts. The closest I'm getting is Victorian science fiction airships. I don't mind ironclads as long as it's not American Civil War ironclads. I just have an aversion to anything that's American Civil War. First of all, I think they're ugly. And beauty of things, in my opinion, is important to wargaming. For instance, I like pre-dreadnoughts, okay? But if you go and look at the pre-dreadnought schemes, there's a lot of those pre-dreadnoughts that were painted almost like a very, very light gray, almost white, with the yellow funnels. And that's it. And it's ugly as sin. And I don't care for that. Now, the thing is if you look at a lot of the pre-dreadnought paint schemes, a lot of the countries have very similar or almost identical paint schemes for pre-dreadnought. So if I was going to get into that period, and I've said this before, if I did get back into naval wargaming, it would be that period. It would be, hell, even before 1900. It would be 1880 to 1895 period is what I would do, And, I would have to do stuff like, okay, I'm going to do Japanese. Well, I'm going to paint them this way so they look Japanese-ish, and, obviously plausible looks, but just so you can tell them apart from each other. Because a lot of the paint schemes between a lot of the nations are really similar, Some of the German ships and the U.S. ships were painted the same. That doesn't work, So it doesn't work for me. But if I got into that again, which is very doubtful, that's probably what I would do, is that period, and just do what if stuff. Because at that point, anybody could have potentially fought anybody else. So, and you could have three-way battles. Not so much the historical stuff. I've done the historical stuff before, and there's nothing wrong with it, but, and I'm not interested in Russia-Japanese War or Spanish-American War. So I would do a period before the Spanish-American War, and get those funky ships like those Italian ironclads that had the huge guns that fired like once a month, but they could carry 10,000 troops, weird stuff like that. So, Marco, welcome. Mr. Rick, good evening. And the Russian colluders. Niet. I don't know if you're Russian, but you got Russian... I can't do that from this screen? Okay. We'll flush you from this screen then. Remove. Okay. I don't know what you're trying to sell, but this isn't the place for that. I have nothing against the Russians. Just behave. Anyhow, so if I did get back into that, it would be, do all those wacky things. But I don't see any point in getting in that. But I do go in there and go like, oh, Tumbling Dice makes some figures. Let's see what miniatures they make, And I get my jollies looking at, who makes what and how much it would cost to buy it, and I don't buy it, My time for making those impulse purchases is long over. So if I need something, I'll buy it, but there's lots of things I don't need that are out there. I've made a lot of impulse purchases and have a lot of stuff that I never did anything with. And that's really unsatisfying for me. Painting the little thing to the knife. All right, did we get any of that bronze out here? Because we always do that with the parts of the weapons. 7 folks. I guess I stayed on here long enough. How long have I been on here? An hour and 15 minutes. Yeah. Get this guy done. And then we'll be only left with 4. That's what you got to do. You got to keep plugging away. Not painting isn't going to get the figures done. I better move these shit. I don't want them to hit the floor. Yeah, I'm not much of an impulse buyer. I think everybody has been an impulse buyer at one point or another. And, I used to be big into like plastic models a long time ago, late 80s, early 90s. And I'd buy one and I wouldn't even get done with that. I'd run into something. Something would happen, like I couldn't figure out what decals to put on it or how to paint it, or I'd run into something and get into analysis paralysis mode, and I said, screw it, and I'd go buy another one. And so I'd have a bunch of them that were unfinished. I finished a few, but I had a bunch of them that were unfinished, and that's unsatisfying. I actually have a fair amount of models to do in 20 millimeter or 172nd slash 176th. I sold a lot of them that were unopened and or unbuilt, and ones that were started I've kept because those aren't models; those are wargame figures, so to speak. So you have to keep battling the lead pile, or at least feel good about it. I've talked one of the armies that I've got on my to do list is pre-feudal Scots. I've got all the figures for them, right? But there's other figures that I don't have that I may like better. For instance, some of the warband and stuff that they have. I don't really like the guys that I have, but they would work. But I'm like, okay, once I start working on them, I don't mind buying, 3 or 4 packs of different figures from, who is it? QRF. And by the time they get here, I'm already working on other stuff just to add variety to make the army really interesting looking. But I won't do that until it's time to work on that army, if I get around to it, because otherwise I'm just, pissing in the wind, Ran into that problem myself. I was building 1/350th trumpeter HMS Hood, and I got a full photo etch with it, and that put me off so much from finishing. Yeah. I don't know the trumpeter was being made when I was doing models. More Chinese infiltration. I always loved the Tamiya stuff. I remember back in the day, I'd build a 1/600 scale Airfix kits that they were rebranded here in the States as MPC. I had the Bismarck and the Prinz-Eugen, a Graf Spee. I don't remember if I had the Exeter or the Achilles, or maybe I had both of them. I had the Ark Royal, you know, and of course they weren't waterline, so you have the rest. I was a kid. I wanted to play with them and stuff, So that's when I found out about naval wargaming. I was the natural lead in for that, you know. But check out that book that I have on the. If you're into ships at all, check out that book. Maybe it's a book you already have. I think it's an amazing book that is not thought provoking, but makes you daydream about stuff. And like I said, once I found out there was naval wargaming and little miniatures, I'm like, oh man, I was hooked. I was hooked. Definitely. And then there's some people that are into history, and I never understand this. And obviously, we're not part of that group, or we wouldn't be doing this. But there's some people that are really into history and have no desire to do any kind of historical wargaming. And the way I look at it is, this is your way to participate in history. In a way. Otherwise, you're just reading what other people did. And I don't think that's very exciting. Not when you could participate in or have an impact on how it could turn on. But people that are really into history, there's some of them that just aren't interested at all. Like my dad just would never, he'd never play a war game, but he's kind of he was a university professor, and from a different time period, and so maybe that's not the best example, but there are lots of people that there's somebody I ran into in the last couple of years or whatever, and they were a parent of one of acquaintance of my daughter, and went over there, and I think he even taught history or something like that, and had zero interest in wargaming. I don't know. I just see, for me, it's like somebody was commenting, how come Mitch doesn't paint? I don't care that whether he paints or not. He doesn't need to produce. He just needs to be a willing body. I spent many years without having a willing body here in town, and so just having a willing body is good enough for me. He doesn't need to be a producer, because that's really rare then, to find somebody that produces stuff. Because there's some people that like to do hobby stuff but then never play. So it's hard to find the balance between somebody that has a good attitude playing, somebody's willing to play, somebody that also produces and makes miniatures. Somebody who it's I've heard you guys horror stories, wargamer horror stories, that they'll have one guy that joins the group and he runs everybody off. I think fortunately we don't have that problem. But if we did have somebody run everybody off, I hope it's me. No, we don't have that problem. I've been fortunate that I really haven't had horror stories with local players and attitudes, win at all costs folks. And I had a couple guys when I started playing, the two guys that always like to argue and stuff about it, but it's not like they came to blows or call each other names or something like that. But it was always like, man, you need to, if you guys want to argue this much, you really need to work on becoming lawyers or something like that. But I don't want to encourage anybody to become a lawyer. We got enough of those in this world already. But yeah, I've been blessed that anybody who's been in my local game group has always had a good attitude. And I mean, maybe that's part of it. Part of it that you set yourself. You can't be like a butthole and then want everybody to behave. I mean, it kind of goes both ways. You can't be unwelcoming and then expect everybody to behave. That was you that asked about Mitch. I hear you on that. I run into the same problem here, finding gaming partners. Spencer Wright. Welcome. Welcome. And yeah, I mean, I'm blessed. I'm blessed in that department. But I did penance for a long time. We had a pretty active war game group in the early 90s, and about 1993, 1994, it all fell apart. And I didn't have a regular wargaming partner until 2010. So it was a long time. I was only gaming when I went twice a year when I went to gaming conventions. It was long. It was a long haul. Rick is the king of the battlefields of mana. He is. But again, Rick doesn't paint. But it doesn't matter that he doesn't paint. It seems like he's fun playing games. He has the right attitude. And, that's what's important. So, I had this one guy that I knew. I still know him. Don't really game with him anymore, but mainly because they're into doing stuff that I'm not really interested in. They don't play historical games. They don't play historical war games. The way I look at it is, I like violent games because I'm a devout pacifist every day. Okay, I don't kill people or take over the world or So my idea of role playing is to do that on the board, and it's fun to talk about that kind of stuff. But maybe people that play Settlers of Catan or Axe Murderers, and maybe that's the balances everything out. But he has a group here in town, and he has a lot of board games. Maybe not as many as Rick, but hundreds. And I got him finally to come to a show and play DBA. and he plays this scenario that's three people on a side. It was, I guess, great battle BBA. Marty was running something for War of the Roses. So he gets put on the opposite side of me, and his commander is just this miserable guy that he's one of like less than four people. If I had to count how many people I've encountered playing DBA that I would rather not play with him against, he's one of like four. And he turned him so off of playing it that he never played again. So you're an asshole and you just turn some guy away that actually has a good attitude, because this guy that I was getting to want to play, he always has a good attitude. Yeah, well, he won't be doing that anymore because he died in real life. So, but he's just a miserable guy, the whole time turning everything over. And, I may not be perfect, but I don't think I'm miserable and turn people away. I hope not. If I turn you away, then you need to get thicker skin. Check out Tiny Battle Publishing and Hollenspiel. The new Worthington Siege Sir, always on the radar. Tony, that reminds me of a spouse of a good friend of mine. How could I forget? She brings the mood down at game nights. I probably told you. Oh yeah, I can't wait to find out who that is. Is she in any of your videos? You don't need to call her out, but yeah, you told me about that. I don't think a whole lot about people that behave differently around their spouse. I'd like to think I'm the same butthole around my wife if she was here or not. It's too difficult to pretend to be your two different people. But I've known some people that are, they're one way when their wife's around. In my case, it's always wife, because I haven't really done any gaming with women. Not that I have anything against it. It's just, this really isn't their, I mean, if I was in a needlepoint, I probably wouldn't be doing any needlepoint with any dudes, So it's just the nature of the beast. But yeah, it's always the wife. The wife shows up and they act differently around her. And it's dramatically different. And it's never better different. So, yeah, that's a shame. The wife should make you better, not ruin you. Okay, we need to give this guy a little bit of a wash. But yes, I remember who that is. I'm dying to find out who it is. Oh, yeah, you said he was like your best friend, so I'm trying to figure out, okay, which one of those guys is his best friend? Hopefully it's not the guy that you're just talking to right now that said, hey, Rick. Whoops. Where the hell is my Nuln oil? Oh, man, here we go. Having too much fun. She's in some of my earlier videos, probably 5 years ago. Oh, I have to search your old stuff. Yeah. There was a thing, there was a thing that was going on. Speaking of wives, there was a thing that was going on like 3 years ago or something like that. Maybe I've even been on the miniatures page, which I don't go to on anymore because it was just like a bitch fest. I'm not one for like bitching about stuff. If you don't like something, then, well, that's not true. I don't mind bitching about things, but not in my hobby. This should be all positive. But anyhow, they were making some big thing about, how, I missed it. I needed to add more. This guy has these little pieces of cheek pieces on there, and I didn't paint him like a dumbass. So let's fix that before. Let's close this so we don't have a spillage problem. And let's come back over here and paint the little cheek pieces before we move on. But they were putting out this poll on, how they could get more women wargamers and stuff like that. And, and making a big deal out of it like it was some crusade. And I'm like, I'm all for, having a more inclusive hobby, but there's just some demographics that just aren't interested in certain things as a general rule. And there's nothing wrong with that. It is what it is, Like I go into I'll go somewhere and I'm like, I'm the weird one because I'm like, oh, we go buy a Joann's Fabrics. I want to go in a Joann's Fabrics and spend about an hour in there. And I don't do needlepoint, but I'm always looking for felt and buttons that you could make shields, and I could spend a lot of time in there. But I go in there and I'm like the only dude that's in there, and that's fine. I don't need to change the way the world is. That's just how it is, But as a matter of fact, I got the demographics on my followers. I don't have a single female follower, and I don't know what I could do about that. I mean, maybe have war game with women, but there's just not any women war gamers really to speak of. I mean, as many games as I've been playing in my whole life, I've maybe encountered it. Well, we've had them at tournaments. One of them even won a tournament. She was really cool, and then never showed up again. Just a handful, It's just that's just how things are. I mean, but they were coming to blows over what they were going to do, and I'm like, look, I'll put out my stuff. You either like it or you don't, and it is what it is. I'm not excluding everybody. It's just there's just some things that appeal to some people more than other things. So Stephen Gross, welcome. Or quilting like your wife. Yeah. My kids wanted to live in your neighborhood when they saw the Halloween video you posted. Yeah, that's like your favorite. I like Halloween because it's the time of year where the weather starts getting reasonable. Generally. She wants any plans to game with her husband to go through her. What the hell, man? She'd prefer we contact her instead of him for anything, actually. She has to always be with him if he comes over. That's just miserable, man. And it'd be the same way if it was, if you wanted to do something with her and it needed to go through the husband. You shouldn't be controlling each other, Yeah, you run through it, but, you need to be considerate. But figures turn out excellent as usual. Thank you. Of course, when she is here, she complains nonstop. Like, why not just stay at home? She has a miserable attitude that I simply cannot stand. So, no, I haven't had them over lately. 5 years. What brand of paints do you use, or is it a mix? It's a mix of all kinds of stuff. I have a ton. Let's see if I can screw this up. Let me wake up my phone. I mean, the phone's on, but come on. I don't know why my screen's blank. I need this. Hello? There we go. All right, now let's see if I can flip this. Because this is a new cam app. So let me see if, I know how I can do it. The controls here. I need to show you this because it's easier to show you than explain. What does this do? This rotates. No, this is the mirror image. How about use the back camera? The other one had it. How come I can't do it with this one? White balance, exposure, offset, volume, boost. Oh my gosh, everything I need and nothing of what I do. I don't need to save a JPEG. I don't need to rotate. This is autofocus, brightness. I could zoom in. I could zoom out. I don't know how to flip this thing over. Anyhow, I have behind me a wall of paints. Let me see if I can do this. Let me disconnect this. All right. And all right, here is my wall of paints. And I have almost every Vallejo color that's available because I ended up selling my stuff in the early 2000s that I wasn't using. So instead of just keeping the cash, I ended up just repurposing it back in the hobby. So Vallejos were the first ones that had the dropper bottles, the dropper bottle tops, and I really liked that. So that's what I invested it back into. So I think I ordered them all from, I think Brookhurst Hobbies at the time was the ones that had them here in the States. So I have that. I've got some old Citadel colors here from circa 1989. You open them up and they still smell like Reagan. So they're that old and they're that alive. I even have a shadow gray that's not even open yet. Look at that. Should be in a museum. Which of course means it's the only one that the latch isn't broken on, because those things, that was the first thing to go on them. And I've got a few craft paints over here. I got a whole pile of them somewhere else. I don't use them a whole lot, but I do have some army painters, but it's mostly Vallejo. I love these. My favorite paints of all is the Coat the Arms, but they're just not available in the United States at a place where I can just walk up and grab them. So I do use a mix. I'm not opposed to anything in particular. I grew up with the paints that we grew up were absolutely horrible. Those Testors things, and even worse than Testors was Pactra. If you're old enough to remember Pactra, those were Testors paints that were even crappier, in a bottle that had a bunch of nooks and crannies, so all the thick stuff would get stuck in there. So yeah, anything is an improvement over that. And yeah. So I use lots of different ones, but all water base for sure. Found most things for my figures and painting Hobby Lobby or Joann's. Yeah, Hobby Lobby has a reasonable selection. You don't need to have that and get it on Sunday, because they're closed on Sunday. So you need to plan your needs a little bit better. A lot of women gamers I have gamed against were brought into the hobby by their dads. That makes sense. Yeah. That's one thing I'm lacking, are some female friends who want a war game. I've gotten a few into miniature wargamings for things like dungeon crawls, but not any army level battles. We do the same thing with bringing kids into the hobby. We rant that the hobby is aging or dying, that we don't run games for kids, so they include them at big events. I've run a couple of games. So one thing I won't do, I'm a really easy learner. Somebody told me one time, hey, you should do a DBA game for, learning how to play DBA. I ran it one time, and one person showed up and they dropped their kid off, and the dad didn't stick around. So I was literally babysitting this kid for like 4 hours who didn't even want to be there. And I'm like, I'm not doing that shit again. So the learning games Mitch does, and he's had better luck with other people. But, I figure, hey, what I do to bring people into the hobby is do the videos, I only get burnt once. Ever used Reaper paints? I had one. I had a couple of them, and they're weird. They behave, the consistency in them is rather strange. Like, I've got a couple of army painter paints, as opposed to the Spanish paints. I call these the Danish paints, because I think most of them I have are from Denmark. Where's one? See if I could find one. I've just got the tail end of them all. Here we go. Is this one from Denmark? Yes, made in Denmark. And I like the colors, but it seems like they've got more of the thinner. It's not thinner. It's whatever the stuff that's in it, more than the pigment. And they just behave a little bit different. I prefer the Vallejo. That doesn't mean I'm not going to buy any more of these, but yeah. The new Game Workshops, they're new in it. What is it? Whatever the Game Workshop version 6, whatever that they have now, those are good. They went through the second iteration that were absolutely terrible in my opinion. They were this sized, and they had the bottles that screwed off, and this was hard plastic, and the lid was hard plastic, and I there was colors where I used once, and I went to use it a second time, and it had already dried out. So they were terrible. These are okay now. They're back to a similar formula as they did back when they had these. So I'm happy with Games Workshop. I just don't like their weird named colors, but I've got all the standard stuff. Ultimately, I just kind of use a color for a starting point. So I have more colors than I could possibly need, but like I said, the reason I had this many is because I just invested what I had gotten from selling my miniatures back in the hobby. Like, the first things I sold were all my Battletech miniatures. And I had, 40 of them or something like that, and we just never played Battletech. And I'm like, well, I'll just sell these. They actually look reasonable, if I remember correctly. And, and there was no point in just pocketing that money. You could just invest it right back into your hobby, Some better others for both Reaper and Army Painter. Yeah, I don't think there's anybody who has the Reaper paints here in town, but we're very limited. We have like two game shops and Hobby Lobby, and Joann's will have the craft. And I'll tell you what, when the pandemic hit for the first time, they were like cleaned out of those of the of the craft paints. Like people were doing craft stuff that had no business doing craft stuff. Hey, look, there should be a priority, right? Us painters that painted all the time, we should get first dibs on the craft paint. No, I think at that time I wanted to get some black and white or whatever to use as the core colors, and there wasn't any, so I found another way around it. But yeah, they were cleaned out, and it took them a while to restock. So this guy just needs his helmet brightened up. Now that we've did the Nuln Oil, and that just doled out those parts a little bit. So I'll use the same metals. I don't want it to be too shiny. This guy isn't a big polisher, and we're just going to highlight the ribs or the reinforcing bands on this helmet. This gives a helmet that's almost similar to a Viking type helmet. And there he's done. Let's see if we can get a closer view, since I mess with the camera things here. Let's see if we can. Let's open this up and let's zoom in. Okay. And it's a little blurry, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And yes, these are supposed to look boring and drab. Boring and drab is cheap. If these guys had money, they'd be riding a horse. Now. Yeah, again, they'll look better in real pictures. So. I don't want to spend $80 for a mixer. I don't want to make the noise. I gotta like paint like, shh, like be quiet, people are sleeping. So I don't want to make all that noise. The little mixing balls are wonderful. They've taken me in directions that, you know, being in Texas, I should use Reaper paint. Are they made in Texas? That's pretty cool. But I use their miniatures and brushes. Are Reaper brushes made in the U.S.? I bet they're not. Let me know if they are. I'll go buy some. I gotta start looking for brushes soon, and I don't want brushes made you know where. So I know I'm gonna have to paint more. It's okay. It's all right. I need a refill on the tea. I will be right back in moments, and I'm just gonna mute the phone. You can look at these. Barbarian, whatever the peasantry, the pleasant peasantry. Be right back, folks, in a few minutes. Okay, and we're back. 10 o'clock at night, and I'm not ready for bed. Actually, 10:10. You guys got my juices going. That's good. Reapers in Dallas. I had no idea. I had no idea. How cool. Brushes do not say the origin. Well, you know what that means. So I'm not opposed to Games Workshop products. I know that they're kind of pricey, and I get it. They're paying for their advertising and all that kind of stuff. So I go to this store, and they had these tufts that made by Games Workshop, and they were in these irregular shapes, and they looked like they'd be really cool. I'm like, oh, I'll pick these up. I was actually in Jacksonville, and I'm like, I'm gonna go to the store, and I'm like, well, I don't want to come out empty-handed. I don't want to buy stuff I'm not going to use, but tufts are always cool. So the tufts were actually made in where, and I'm like, I'm not paying Games Workshop prices for them to make them at the slave shops in that place. So I didn't buy them. I was surprised that anything Games Workshop would be made there. Who knows? So anyhow, Monument brushes are super. They are made in Germany. Monument brushes. Used Army paper, Monument, Reaper, and some cheapies. Yeah, I have a ton of cheapies. I have a ton of. Oh, and we're still zoomed in. Hey, I'm gonna need to fire my producer. I think I need to hire a producer before I can fire one. There we go. Yeah, I got a ton of them here, and I got a ton of them here in the. Look at this. Look, it's out of control. Well, I had gone to. Last time I bought some, See, there's lots of these that haven't even been touched. So, but when I get close, I'm going to need to get some more. And last time I bought brushes. I had bought them from Walmart, a place I haven't been in 4 years and don't have any plans on going back. And I bought like these 10 brush packs for like $3.84 or whatever. So that's double whammy. Can't get them from Walmart. Can't get them from where. And if you guys want to get them from there, I'm not going to hold it against you. That's just a decision that I make. But I'm going to write down that Monument. Are they on through eBay? I'm not eBay. Amazon. Monument brushes. Monument brushes. There was one brand, as a matter of fact, I was looking today that they're like $25. Well, they were $25. Now they're like $29. And they're also German. They're like sable brushes that are made in Germany. I don't know if they're worth a damn or anything, but hey, I'll buy them one time and I'll see how that works out. But I look where I spend my money if I can, Most of Games Workshop and Forge World are tooled and made beyond the wall. Yeah, I don't want to buy those things, Just out of principle. Okay. Next guy. So he's got a fur thing. And the last guy we did was black. So let's do a light gray for this guy. And let's use a light gray that we haven't used. So maybe this color right here. Green gray. Monument Hobbies. Okay. Monument Hobbies. I have neat handwriting, but when I write quickly, I don't. Hopefully I can read what the hell I wrote later on. I could just look at the feed and see what we were talking about. Always looking for other ideas. You guys, I can't see all the stuff, so if there's something else out there that, like the, what's the freaking nice brushes? Winsor & Newton, right? We used to have an art supply store here in town. It used to be called Central Office Plus. It used to be called Chestnuts. It was a chain here in town. I don't know if it was a chain everywhere, but they went bankrupt probably in the mid-90s or whatever, and they got bought up by a Central Office Supply or whatever. And they basically kept the same art stuff or whatever. They had Winsor & Newton brushes. But I wasn't in a position to buy a $10 brush. I'm really not in a position to buy it now, but I could probably justify it. But I want to physically go to the brush and go and look at it and go, yeah, I like this tip. This is going to be okay. Not just buy one sight unseen from Amazon and hope to God I don't get one that doesn't have that's deformed. You know, because every brush is different, and many of these, I don't have a problem with these brushes that I have because they're cheap, because they last a lot longer than the cost is associated with them. I just don't want to buy things from that country if I can avoid it. You know, it's not that I'm tired of these cheap brushes and they're a piece of crap. I mean, they last plenty. It's just that I just don't want to give them my money. So, Monument Pro Synthetic Brush set is good and reasonable, about $40. Okay, cool. We'll take a look at them. Pro Synthetic. Excellent. Yeah, for the detail stuff, I tap into like, you know, and if you've done any kind of brushes, any kind of brush shopping, you know the size of the brush is irrelevant. It could say it's a 10-aught and it's less, you get less control with it than a 1. It just depends on the brush and what kind of a tip it has and so forth. So, you know, I like to visually inspect them if I can. And we'll take a look for those Monument brushes and see what that's all about. I'm always looking for an alternative. Like I said, not because, you know, they weren't a good value. I mean, you can't beat 10 brushes for less than $4. I mean, you can't beat that. And they're not crap. Now, in the set, you would get like that one that's that straight edge one, this thing, which is damn near useless. Let's see if I have one here. No, here's one that's older. You know, so you know what I'm talking about. You know, the straight edge kind, which you would think would be useful for the painting the edges of the stands, but it's not. You end up going over the edge and stuff like that. But you're better off with like a round. But you know, it wasn't because, you know, it wasn't a good value. They just don't want to buy them. I don't want to buy them anymore. So, so looking for other alternatives. Some other people can use my business, you know. So, yeah, it doesn't have to be made in the U.S. How about like not made somewhere who's our enemy? Is that so much to ask? Is that so much to ask? You know, Germany, Italy. I mean, why the hell isn't there Italian brushes out there? You know, those sons of bitches paint things. You know, why aren't there Italian brushes? Okay, so they're more expensive. All right, so you take care of them. You know. I had half of mine when I put my boycott in to just take all my brushes and make a video of me snapping them all in half. But I'm like, no, let's not go to that extreme. I don't want to be wasteful. And besides, I'm not necessarily trying to prove a point or change everybody's attitude. It's just, you know, whatever works for you, you do what's good for you, you know. Okay. So we got the bottom coat on that. That's 3 guys after this one. Man, if we can get this guy done tonight, man, I'm going to be sitting pretty. So that means there's a chance that I might get all these guys done by this weekend. So what do we got left after that? Well, after we got Elisa Loy done, we've got a fast horde to do. That's 5 figures. We got an artillery piece to do. And we have 2 generals to do. One of them being a cavalry general, which is Dracula himself. And the other one is the Moldavian commander, who's a knight. So not a whole lot. Then that army is done. Except we're also doing their allies. So then we get to do Polish knights. I know I don't have my Polish people aren't on here right now, but I know they've been chomping at the bit for me to paint Poles. So it's coming. It's coming. And the Poles are really, I love anything heraldry related. And the Poles have really cool heraldry. And I've got some cool Polish figures to do that you guys probably have never seen. They're figures from Falcon that I've had a long time ago, and they've just been sitting in the wings. And we're going to mix them in with some Essex guys, and those knights are going to look cool. Those light knights are going to look cool. I'm looking forward to that. A lot of red and white in those guys. That's 2 popular colors definitely for Polish stuff. Not everything is red and white, but they have a predominance of that. Cool stuff. Cool stuff ahead. And then we can talk about doing the next army. Whatever it might be. If I get these guys done early enough, if there's a good chance I may go back and do my Japanese and bring them up to 3.0. We'll see. If I can get them done in time for the show, because we are going to do an Asian theme. It'd be pretty cool to run an army I haven't played in a long time. I love my Asian armies, but I also like a reason to get some new stuff done. We're going to add a little bit of white to this. And then we're going to kind of almost like a wet dry brush. Very gently. All right, so what color undershirt this guy going to have? Well, the previous guy was a green. Let's do a red, but one that's not very bright, because, that shit's expensive. So in other words, a shitty red one. A red that's not very, colorful. You're about to start painting 1/72nd Scale Vikings. That's something that we need to do. We need to do an armies of the enemies of the Vikings. We need to just play through all their enemies and stuff. Blades to the walls. I think Luke has a Viking army, and so does Mitch. So that might be interesting because lots of people are fans of the Vikings. Lots of people have that army. I don't particularly care for the army. It's a little too not monochromatic, because it's not a color issue. It's just too much of the same troop type. And if I know if the people I frequently play with already have an army, my incentive to building that set army is pretty much nil, when I could be painting something that nobody has. Much more productive. So let's get this one. Yeah, this is exactly the one I want to use. Scarlet. Let's get old Scarlet out here. And even though this is plenty bright red, we're not going to use it as is. We're actually never going to get to this point. So we're going to mix red in here to get, as I like to say, a really negative shade here. If you think of this as a number line, remember that thing you learned in math class and you never used it for shit? Well, now you can use it for this. I can't help you with a quadratic formula, though. That thing is, in fact, worthless. But the number line I can help you with. So here's your zero marker, okay? You start adding lighteners, I start calling it like a +1, a +2, a +3, right? So I start with like a -3. This is like a -3. The negative being because it has black into it, which darkens it. Anything is a negative number that is below, that is a lot darker than the core of color, which is what I call that. So we're going to paint everything in this -3 red, scarlet red. And just like this, you can do different variations of red by picking a point to call your 0 before you get to this. And I'll explain a little bit about that as we get to it. So here we have our -3. Okay, we painted everything as red on this figure that is in that color. It's the darkest shade that red is ever going to be. All right, I think I need to go to a smaller brush for this next phase. I think I do. So we're going to add a little bit more of the color. We're going to do like a -2. Okay, a -1 would just have a little bit of black with this color, and this would be the 0. Okay, so here's my -2. So we're going to avoid some shadows. We're just going to get the highlights, especially like on his sleeve and stuff like that that stands out. I'm just verbalizing this. This is damn near mindless for me because I've done this so many times. Probably since about 1995, 1996, something like that. I've been painting about the same way since then. So normally what I would do, if I wanted to be a color like this, if I was painting somebody who had heraldry or somebody who had, some cloth that was new and really well made, I would build it up to this. But I'm going to call this my 0. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add white, my lightener, to this color. And it's going to have a little bit of a pink tint. Little bit. But, it just looks that way. But if you have something that's red and you wear it out in the sun, yeah, it's going to fade and stuff. And that's what the sky is. This is a color that wasn't very bright to begin with when he got a hold of it. Or he's worn it a lot and it's been faded. Or was given to him because his lord didn't like that damn color because it wasn't bright enough. Any of those excuses, okay? So we made our 0, we called this the 0. Here's your +1. Now we're adding a +2 to it. And that's probably where we're going to stop. And this is just totally, totally mindless. All right, now we'll get to do the part that I call bringing this guy to life. Let's paint his flesh. Okay? And both of these colors should still be alive. And we're going to use the colors for the basic white man flesh, or white women if we were doing that as well. Let's see. Big fan of Vikings. Vikings versus Anglo-Saxons. Wasn't a lifestyle game. Wanted to be a game you could play once, pick up later in the year, and I have a novel of a rule book to read through. Had to be medieval fantasy, my favorite theme. More low fantasy, so little magic, but with lots of troop types, both mounted and foot. Rank and file style combat, customizable armies. And it doesn't go out of style and doesn't have a dozen supplements that constantly change. Yeah, and you can make it whatever you want, Yeah, I don't like things that... I'm not opposed to playing something fantasy. I don't like things that have high magic. All right. So we're going to use our red leather and black. Make this dark shade. And we'll paint all of the fleshy bits in that color. That means the hands, the face. Might as well avoid the beard because if I cover it, I'm just going to have to cover it again with something else. All the fleshy bits. All right, and then we will add more of this red leather in here, which means less of the black, more of the red leather. Okay, and then we will mix this red leather. Mix this red leather with the sunny skin tone. And start coming up from there. If there's one thing you shouldn't take shortcuts on, I think it's the flesh, because everybody knows what a face looks like. Everybody has one. Some people have two. So you know what that looks like in the mirror. So the one color that has more layers than anything else is, for me, has always been the face. Because I used to take this flesh color and then put it on them and call it a day. Way back, way back when. Okay, now, remember we're here, so we're going to have more of this sunny skin tone. The fingers. Sometimes I had some figures that don't have the fingers molded on, so you almost kind of have to invent them. Which isn't difficult. You just got to kind of give the illusion that they're there. You don't want them to look like they've got oven mitts, you know. And I don't think I'm going to add any more of that. We're going to add a little bit. We're going to add white from here. Here's a little bit of sunlight that's hitting his chest like that. And maybe add a little bit more white for the final highlight. So this is why I couldn't do 28s. If I had 28s, I'd spend freaking 8 hours on a figure. I just don't have that kind of time to do that. I mean, if I painted bigger figures, I'd spend even more time and make them look better. I mean, I have to. It's visible. Okay. So he's done. Now let's go ahead and put his. Let's do his bow. Let's see if we got any interesting comments and We'll mix up the color for his bow. Anglo-Saxons. Oh, nothing new. Okay. That's all right. Bow. Oh, we don't need to put more of this stuff out. There's plenty of it right there. You can see this is already curling for a couple of reasons. Anytime you put this paint down, it does not allow the paper to stick as well to the sponge. So as you can see, as I've got this whole area used over here, it's not sticking as well as the sponge. So the sponge is plenty wet. You can still see moisture that comes out of it. But it's just one of those things. These papers don't last forever, you know. They last just long enough. Just long enough. Interesting comment. I wonder what comment that was. That some people have two faces. Some people have three. Oh, and I forgot, not only do I have this stuff to do, I've got to do the camp, which is the Forest of the Impaled. And we got to do the little Castle Brand, too, for a BUA. So, little pewter thing. We're going to paint this up, and this will look awesome. I'm sure it's going to look awesome. But it's not going to be quick. That's probably, it's going to take a while. I'm going to guess it's probably going to take 10 hours or so to paint it. While we're doing it last. Little BUA for... I guess there's other rules that use that terminology. Built up area. I've never heard it before DBA. It's called a city or a town or whatever. Built up area. What's it built up with? Never heard that terminology before. Built up area that if the wrong people show up could be turned into a turn down area. A torn down area. No, you were checking for any interesting comments. So you put an interesting comment down. Ah, dad joke. It's dad joke 30. You agree to prefer 15 millimeters opposed to 28. It's just enough detail for me. Nothing crazy like 28 millimeter. It's not a cost thing for me. It's a time thing. So if 15 millimeters cost what 28s did, and 28s cost with 15s, I'd do 15s anyways. It's not a cost thing. It's just a... I can't spend 12 hours on a figure, and I just can't slap paint on it. I'm beyond that, you know. I'm going to try to do as good a job as I can. These, so, you know, you look back on them in a few years and go, yeah, those guys were pretty cool that I painted. Not like, well, they'd look better if I'd just taken my time. If I just taken my time, you know. I don't want to have that conversation with myself. I could do better. And some white. Tooken. The things I say that I would never write down. Okay, we need... This guy is going to have a black beard. And let's go ahead and do his helmet. Let's go ahead and do his helmet. Not a dad, but a smartass. Well, you know what I always say? A smartass is better than a dumbass. Burn down area. That's right. I'm packing for a different kind of game night tomorrow. Staying up, playing video games at a friend's house, bringing a small flat screen and a couple of consoles. So you're a PlayStation guy, aren't you? PlayStation 1 lost the console war for me. Back in the, what was it? 1999, 2000, 2001, something like that. I was going to get a console, and it was between the original Xbox and the PlayStation 2. I think the PlayStation 2 was the one around, and the Xbox won out for me. And I've just been, I don't do a whole lot with it, but for like shooters and stuff like that, you know, it's okay. It got me through that part where I didn't have a computer. I don't like games where I like to be, when I'm rushed, you know, so I don't really do any kind of shooters or anything like that before, but, yeah. And then, what was it that just happened? Microsoft bought, who was it they bought? Activision? So now it's going to be like, going to be difficult to, some of those games to come out on PlayStation. Who knows? Maybe next week it'll change something else, you know, so. I don't do a whole lot of that. I have done. I've spent a lot of hours on it, but it doesn't take the place of this. Anybody can play a video game. So. And never was a fan of Nintendo stuff. Never cared for Nintendo. A friend of mine growing up had a Sega Genesis, and that had some fun games on it. But I never liked Nintendo. Never. Games are too pacifist. So I like playing violent games because, you know, I don't even watch horror movies. But I like playing violent games. I'm a pacifist every day. Right, there's little brass parts on it. Let's get the little, let's use this color for the knife and make it a little bit redder than it was in the past. We can probably use this color right here. No, we need to go darker. Paint the whole thing like so. And then let's add some of that core color and a little bit of white. And a tiny little bit more. Okay, now you do the handle. Just about any of the colors here will do. Just make my own gray. Do some heavy highlighting so it looks like there's some little straps or something there. I don't need to go lighter than that. It won't pop out. Okay. And the beard and the hair and the Nuln oil for that matter. I think it's dry enough to do the Nuln oil. That's the other thing is I'm used to using these type of paints where they're dry in a moment. I'm putting such little amount of paint down. Uh-oh. Let's see who that is. That a spammer? Nope, it's Kevin. I say that all the time. In fact, yep. Bungie. That's the people that make the Halo stuff. I remember when Halo first came out. I thought it was the smoothest running the shooter ever. I just didn't like the plot line. I thought the enemies were stupid looking. You know, I think the game would run really well, but I think I got the second Halo and that's it. I don't know, what are they on? Halo 12 or something like that? I don't know. I'm probably not going to play another shooter again. I've already saved the world's countless times from Nazis. They're on their own. I'm done. I mean, you keep bringing the Nazis back. I'm like, I'm done. You know. I mean, how many times that we need to put those guys to. I put them down and they keep bringing them back up. And this guy again has those little cheek pieces. And the cheek pieces. Right there. And right there. We can probably highlight the center there as well. Okay, so now everything above the waist or the waistcoat is done. So we need shoes, the little wraps, and pants. Oh, the pants, I want kind of a, what if I did like a yellow type color? I mean, I don't want to give them yellow pants, but there's something with a little bit of a yellow tint to it. Master Chief is an awesome hero. I don't know, couldn't get into him. Am I off work tomorrow? No, why would I be off work tomorrow? No, I never, we get like 5 days off a year or some stupid shit like that. We get hardly any days off. We don't get President's Day off or none of that stuff. Not only am I not off work tomorrow, I've got to go into work. So, but that's okay. This time tomorrow I'll be free. And then Mitch has to work on the weekend. Sucker. Damn it. What color should I do for this thing? And a little bit of yellow. I don't know. Maybe I'll do this. This is light blue. I'm going to do this light blue. Let's do this light blue for this. I want to see. They say more Nazis were killed in the movies than were killed in the war. Probably. It's nearly 11 p.m. Yeah, I'm on a roll, man. Yep. The record was the last time we filmed a game with Marty. We were done with the game about 10:30, and we stayed up another 2 hours just chit chatting. So I didn't get home till almost 1, and I had to go to work the next day. But I don't do that consecutive days in a row. So I've got very little of this guy done, and then we'll stop on him, and that'll leave us just 3 people to do. The end is near. The end is near. I'm on a roll, man. You guys did a good job today keeping me entertained. Keeping me the juices flowing. You do a good job. Excellent. Hopefully I entertained you guys somewhat. That's what we're here for. Whatever it is that you guys may be doing. Whatever it is that you may be doing. Yeah, normally I'm not worth a damn after 10. Because I'm up at 5 a.m. every morning. So I only get 5.5 hours tonight. Who cares? No big deal. Been sleeping. I used to sleep a lot less. And I mean, used to like a year ago. Now I'm consistently getting 7.5 hours of sleep, probably. Pretty consistent. I'm not one that sleeps in on a weekend. Nope. I got things to do. I got things I want to do. Okay, so we've got these wraps to do and the shoes. Well, I haven't done a single shoe in a while that's been brown, so automatically that's going to be our shoe color. All right, so let's get the old chocolate brown out here. And wherever she might be, the leather one would work as well. You actually got some painting done. There you go. That's the spirit. Always entertaining Tony. I was watching A League of Their Own. I've never seen that. It's the one with Madonna in it, right? Baseball movie. I could count how many sports movies I have seen on one hand. I don't watch that many movies to begin with, but what was I doing yesterday? I went to the gym and I wasn't listening to music. I was listening to some stand-up, and here I am like an idiot laughing out loud. Well, it was some funny crap. It was freaking funny. Wife looking at me weird. What are you doing? I said, this dude's funny. Which, is sometimes hard to find funny comedians because, I like the kind of comedy that's not in vogue anymore. Oh well. So in order to avoid some kind of a brown wraps, I think we're going to go with like a gray color on the wraps for this guy. So let's make our own gray because we don't want it to just be standard gray. Let's mix some of this brown in here and start adding white to this. Give it a little bit of a brown tinge, but not too much. Right, and a little bit more of this. We're nearly done with this clown. I love basing these guys on pennies because I feel like I could just rotate them and get to anything you want to. I never did the tongue depressors / lollipop sticks, what have you. But hey, you do what works for you, I'm not trying to convert anybody. I am not a control freak. Okay, we're going to call this guy done. And now there's 3 left. Now, Since I knew you guys couldn't see Jack. Let's open this up here and go. Where's yeah, this. Can't really tell. It'll come out in pictures better. Yeah, so he's hanging out with his other folks. Dude, I think they all fit on here. They're not sealed yet. Something magical happens when they seal up. They look even better. So if these guys all look like boring-looking peasants, well, that's kind of the idea. That's intentional. You see these two guys that have red? They will not be on the same stand, guarantee. That would be silly. So, there it is. 3 more guys to go, and then we can done with all these skirmishers. So, they don't look very inspiring right now. They'll look great when they're on the stand. Same thing happened with the Irish. The Irish, I was done painting them. You guys, yellow here, yellow there. These guys aren't going to be very interesting. Done mounting them, and they look one of my favorite armies. So, okay, folks, thanks for stopping by. How long did we go today? Like close to 3 hours? Oh no, hold on a second. Let's cancel that. Let's minimize this. Yeah, 2.5 hours. So, thanks for stopping by. Hopefully, you guys were entertained, got something productive done. And we'll definitely see you this weekend. I may have a shorter painting session on Saturday, but we'll have the full Monty on Sunday. So hopefully we can get through the remaining 3 figures by the end of the weekend and get these guys based up.